So we've got a bit of a situation that's going down with the modding slash hacking slash dumping game scene on the Nintendo Switch 2 that people definitely want to know about if you're someone that participates in that, or just in general knowledge about what's happening with the system and how Nintendo's moving against some of these things that were prevalent on the Nintendo Switch 1. We also got a big restock update when it comes to Nintendo Switch 2, so you don't want to miss out on that. Our Nintendo Switch 2 giveaway is continuing, so we're going to have more information on that as well. Link in the description too. And then, of course, other big game information and updates. Let's go ahead and jump right into it here. We're starting off with the MIG Switch situation and the banning of Nintendo Switch 2 systems from going online if you use one. So shout outs to Nintendo Everything for this one. And then on Twitter, there was a user that talked about this. So it says that Nintendo banning Switch 2 owners using MIG Switch cartridge. Now, Nintendo has long taken piracy pretty seriously overall, including in the Nintendo Switch 1 era, and that now does extend to the Nintendo Switch 2, with reports coming in that the company is banning system owners caught using the MIG Switch cartridge emulator. Now, with the MIG Switch, someone can load up with games obtained through backups of legally purchased games or pirated titles. Although it didn't initially work with Nintendo Switch 2, that changed following a firmware update that the MIG Switch team released. Now, multiple reports are now coming in that Nintendo is banning Switch 2 owners using the MIG Switch cartridge. Their accounts are apparently safe, but affected consoles can't connect to the internet. A message on the system states, the use of online services on this console is currently restricted by Nintendo. Now, meanwhile, Nintendo will likely be keeping a close eye on the hacking scene on Switch 2. There haven't been any massive developments on that front, but we're in the extremely early days of the system's life cycle. There was one thing that I did see online overall, but nothing really too crazy like we saw pretty much instantly with the Nintendo Switch 1. So not quite there yet, but I'm pretty sure at some point it might get there. Now, last October, Nintendo filed a pair of lawsuits against individuals connected to the Switch piracy. One of these was related to the company demanding that modded hardware put an end to the end of sale for mod chips and the MIG Switch. So yeah, developments are definitely going to be continuing on with this. Now, I think that the issue, at least with the MIG Switch, this is somebody from the outside looking in. I'm not in the hacking scene. I don't really do any of that. I just play my games and enjoy, talk about it, live stream, whatever. I'm not really into it like that. But the fact that you can play legally dumped games and pirated titles, I think that's the biggest problem, is that you can play titles that are pirated illegally. If this MIG Switch only made it to where you can just play the legally purchased backups of games, I mean, I'm still thinking Nintendo would probably still want to ban it, but I don't think it would be quite as bad. But it's the fact that you can actually play pirated titles on this thing. So just watch out, guys, for those who have a MIG Switch. I don't have one. You know, like I said, I don't really do that. I just kind of just play my games. I have all my games normal physical. So just be careful, because they are banning the systems with it. Now, once again, it looks like your account is safe, but you don't know if that could extend to your accounts and other things. So yeah, it's one of those things to where Nintendo's probably going to be keeping a very close eye on that and kind of move accordingly based on what happens here. But you guys should also move accordingly and make sure that you subscribe to the channel for a chance to win a Nintendo Switch 2. We're giving it away on June 18th, so coming up here at the time that I'm recording this vid. And all you got to do is check out the link in the description below. Head over to the community post, vote on the poll, drop a comment there. I'll be picking a winner very soon, so hit that subscribe button, guys. All right, let's go ahead and get into the next topic here. We're going to discuss GameStop having restocks on the Nintendo Switch 2, but this time without a freaking staple into the screen like they did before. So on Twitter, here's what GameStop's official account had to say about Nintendo Switch 2 restocks. Switch 2 restocks at GameStop today. Staples not included. As you can see, staples not included. Find a Switch 2 restock at GameStop today. So it does look like it's going to be in store, guys. So if you have been trying to find a Nintendo Switch 2, you still have a chance here with GameStop. So make sure you call around. If you've got multiple different GameStops in your area, call them, see if you can head in and get a Nintendo Switch 2. And I actually recommend, people have talked about, should you get a Nintendo Switch now? Should you wait for later? And I'll always say this, especially with the threat of tariffs and things like that, it might be a good option to pick it up now, just in case something crazy happens in the future. You never know. If the government decides to levy more tariffs on Cambodia or more tariffs on Vietnam, where Nintendo's manufacturing a lot of these Nintendo Switch 2 units, then the price could go up. As we saw the price go up with accessories like the Nintendo Switch 2 Pro controller and the Joy-Con. So it's definitely possible. We saw the prices go up with Microsoft because that's from China. China's getting heavily tariffed right now when it comes to the trade war going on. So I do recommend, if you want the system, if you know that you're going to get the system at some point this year, try to go ahead and pick it up right now before anything crazy happens down the line, because we pretty much got a 3-month pause on the tariffs when it comes to the Vietnam situation, but things could go a different direction later down the line. Plus, there's a bunch of cool games coming out. We got Donkey Kong Bonanza. We got a direct coming up specifically for that game. Plus, there's going to be Metroid Prime 4, and there's going to be a lot more games for the rest of 2025. So I do think that if you want to get it, plus the backwards compatibility is incredible in my opinion. So I would say go ahead and try to find one if you can. And it does seem like GameStop has learned from their lesson and are not going to be stapling a receipt to a box, which just seems like the dumbest thing that I've ever heard of. Why would you staple a receipt to a box? Just tape it. Why would you staple it? Why would you puncture something? Nobody wants to have their box punctured with a freaking staple. So I don't even know what they were thinking in the first place. It needs to be taped to the box if you're going to do that when it comes to the receipt or whatever the case is. So was mine. My order was taped to the box. So yeah, I don't know what they were thinking, but anyway, looks like they learned their lesson here and they've got more restocks coming in, and good on Nintendo for getting those restocks coming in, because Bonanza's coming up, more people are buying Mario Kart World, Cyberpunk 2077 is doing well. So I do think that they need to get more of those in so people can have them. You don't want to see sold out to where nobody can get them, then they have to see the crazy scalp prices online. Right now the scalping's not too bad, but it's around $600 something I've seen to $700. So not too crazy, but definitely want to see that pretty much gone at this point. So get more restocks in so people can pick up the system. So what do you guys think about GameStop restocks? Planning on picking one up? Let me know in the comment section below. Next up, we're going to talk about Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment, big Nintendo Switch 2 update, or at least information that was revealed recently that the game actually started out very similar to Mario Kart World as a Nintendo Switch 1 title. So interesting here. So Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment was originally planned as a game for the original Nintendo Switch 1. Yusuke Hayashi, studio head of AAA studio Koei Tecmo, revealed that information in a brand new interview. He also stated that the project shifted about midway through the development, and he didn't really say what the issue was or what the turning point was. But if you've played Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity on the Nintendo Switch 1, I can tell you what the turning point was. The game was probably running at 7 frames per second overall. Like, the game ran not good on the Nintendo Switch 1, very rarely staying consistent at 30 FPS. So I can understand when they finally caught wind of something more powerful, they're like, oh, cool, because I can guarantee you, yes, they were making tons of money coming in, and I'm going to get into his words here. I just want to say this real quick. They were making tons of money. Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity is the best-selling Warriors game of all time with over 4 million units. So they were making plenty of money, and it was good for them. But at the same time, when it comes to the performance of the game, with the frame rate resolution and all that, that was not really good. So when they found out about the Nintendo Switch 2 hardware, I bet they were ecstatic and ASAP moved that over. But let's hear what Mr. Hayashi had to say from Famitsu. Quote, "When this project first started, we were developing it as a Nintendo Switch game for a while. We changed it to the Nintendo Switch 2 midway through, and just by transferring what we had been creating up until then to the Nintendo Switch 2, the number of enemies that appeared and the frame rate changed dramatically, and the game simply became a lot more fun. We were also surprised at how much the game's fun could change thanks to the hardware." Goodness gracious, I don't think they were surprised. They work on PS5 and Xbox Series. They work on other platforms. They know what's going on here. But yeah, I do think that obviously the Age of Calamity Hyrule Warrior system is a little bit different, and the game is very fun. But that's pretty much the one big knock on Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity, is that the frame rate is just terrible. So yeah, it's considerably better when you have it on the stronger hardware here, to where you can run it at 60 FPS like we've seen already in the creator's voice video, and to where it runs way more stable. Even if you take Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity with no patch, run it on the Nintendo Switch 2. I did a test and it's significantly better, staying at a stable 30 FPS the whole time. The playability is so much better, and that's just the 30 FPS with the resolution not being that great either. So the fact that they have this system to work with now, they can take that Switch 1 game. Essentially, the graphics aren't going to be considerably better overall, but they can take that. It's going to look smoother. It's going to run at a higher resolution. It's going to run at 60 FPS or target that and hit it way more consistently. That's going to make the game way more fun, because this game is all about the action, all about the multiple enemies, going over on all these different battlefields, and having it run at such a poor frame rate sometimes just isn't necessarily fun. So I'm glad that they actually decided to say, yeah, let's move this one over, because I don't know if I could have dealt with another Age of Calamity situation with Age of Imprisonment, because I did have to go through all that. Now, I did love the game. It was like my favorite game released in that year and everything, but at the same time, it's not something that I would like to go through again. And even the DLC, I just had to tap out during the DLC because I wasn't going to go through that frame rate issues and all that, even with the DLC. So I'm so happy that this is a Nintendo Switch 2 game, and we're going to get a much better game for it. So what do you guys think about Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment starting out on Switch 1, then transferring over to the Nintendo Switch 2 for a release this winter? Let me know in the comment section below. All right, and moving on to the next topic here. We're going to be discussing apparently a rough start for Final Fantasy 16 sales on the Xbox hardware. So shout outs to Pure Xbox for this article. And it says that it's been a little bit over a week since Final Fantasy 16 Shadow dropped on the Xbox as part of the Xbox Game Showcase 2025. And considering it's a mainline title in the series, you might assume it sold pretty well on the platform so far. I definitely didn't assume that. The writer just said that, okay? But I didn't assume that. Unfortunately, it's not the case when it comes to the game selling well. Alnea Analytics has told our Hookshot Media colleague, Sammy Barker, that Final Fantasy 16 sold around 22,000 copies on Xbox in its first week. So these are just estimates and they're not concrete sales numbers. So just keep that in mind, guys. We got to wait for the official sales numbers overall. But I don't think it sold super well, and I'm going to get into that in just a bit. Now, we did know that it sold around 3 million plus units on the PS5 at launch, but that's with the marketing cycles and with the hype and with the hands-on and with the creator stuff. This didn't get any of that. They just shadow dropped it on there. Yeah, go buy it overall. So I'm not sure if that was the best plan or strategy, but I do think that maybe they took a little bit too long, and once again, there was no hype cycle or anything so far. But yeah, I wasn't expecting Final Fantasy 16 to do really well on the Xbox platform, and one of the biggest reasons why is because right now on Game Pass, which is what a lot of Xbox users are playing right now, if you look at it, you have Clair Obscur Expedition 33. You can play that on Game Pass. Elder Scrolls Oblivion. Those are two big RPGs that you can play right now with your Game Pass subscription, whereas this is a $50, $60 game or something like that that you have to buy when it comes to it. It's not on Game Pass. Now, I would agree with the Shadow drop if it was going to be on Game Pass, but since it's not going to be on Game Pass, we've seen how probably Xbox has the least amount of people willing to actually shell out the money for some of these big RPGs out there. That's just something that's not going to be very common, especially when you have games like Clair Obscur and Oblivion Remastered on the Game Pass service on top of other big games as well. So I already knew this necessarily wasn't going to do great. I think that if you want to have Xbox users actually purchase a game like this when it comes to full price or things like that, you're going to have it drop day and date, and it's going to have the marketing cycle with the Xbox content creators and users and all that. It's still probably not going to sell as well as what it can do on, like, let's just say Nintendo Switch 2 or on PlayStation, but I think it would be considerably better than what we've seen right here with Final Fantasy 16, just shadow dropping out of nowhere. Not sure if that was the right move, but at the end of the day, I think they just got it just because they wanted to go over to where it's more multi-plat. That's what they're doing. Final Fantasy VII Remake is coming out for the Xbox and Nintendo Switch this fall. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is probably going to come out on Xbox and the Nintendo Switch 2 next year at some point. So they want to get everything multi-platform. They want to start building that, I would say, clientele and that fan base on other platforms outside of PlayStation. So even if you got to take a hit here, I think they're going to be willing to take that hit in order to build a long-term relationship overall. What's going to be really interesting though is how Final Fantasy VII Remake sells on the Nintendo Switch 2 compared to the Xbox platform, as both of those have had somewhat similar hype and marketing cycles overall in terms of the announcement. and the fact that the Xbox Series has way more users right now at this point in terms of just console sales. Now, Nintendo Switch 2 is going to have a lot more, but I doubt it's going to hit 30 million by the end of the year when Final Fantasy VII Remake does come out. So it's going to be interesting to just see how much it sells if we do get splits between the Nintendo Switch 2 version and the Xbox Series version, because there's going to be a huge amount of people probably buying the game in Japan compared to not so much when it comes to Xbox. But in the US, it could be a little bit different, and in Europe could be a little bit different depending on kind of how things go. So we'll see how that works out when we get to the fall and Final Fantasy VII Remake does come out. But what are you guys' thoughts when it comes to everything that we discussed here, from Final Fantasy 16, Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment, the GameStop staple debacle to restock, and Nintendo Switch 2 MIG Switch situation? Let me know in the comment section below. All right, guys, that wraps it up for this video here. Thank you so much for watching. I do appreciate it. Please make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you're someone new, click that notification bell, and check out my other Nintendo Switch 2 content and more right here on screen. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you guys for the next one. Peace.